Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Today we're going to be really, I want to talk about some really good stuff I think that are just going to help you out a ton when we're talking about conflicts of interest. You ever hear about that? Oh, I can't do this, or lawyers know, hey, Sarah, lawyers know this, right? About conflicts of interest. You have to say, well, I can't represent you because I already represent this guy. And, you guys are like at a crossroads. You're just once against each other. So therefore, I have a conflict of interest and I can't represent you. Got it? Well, we have conflicts of interest within ourselves. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? I am telling you right now, it is absolutely mind-boggling how this is just the case. And we don't really think about it, though. We never really kind of go with it. It's just, it's really ridiculous. Sarah says she has to sign a conflict of interest form for every case she takes. See? But what if we had to do that with ourselves? What a good idea that is. And this is why we have a contract. This contract that is just really good stuff that helps us to understand that when we decide to make a change, or we need to really contract with ourselves and get rid of the conflicts of interest because they have it. So when our values collide, it feels like the end of the world because we're saying one thing and we're doing quite another, right? So but we have to also understand something too. And this is the magnificence of being, fearfully and wonderfully made. And this human being right here, right now on earth in this place is that we're a dichotomy of values. We are, that's really what it's about. Do you guys remember, anybody read the Dr. Dolittle books? I read them all when there was several. I'm pretty sure there was like 2 or 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken. But Dr. Dolittle was it a favorite book. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And one of my favorite creatures in it was the push me, pull you. So a push me, pull you, for those of you who are not up on your Dr. Dolittle, is this. It's a combination. It's an animal that is a mixture between a gazelle and a unicorn. And it looks like one gigantic llama, and it's got a head on two heads on opposite sides. That's why they call it push me, pull you, because one wants to go one way and the other wants to go that way. You ever have that happen for you in your life? I know I have. That's the conflict that we all know. That's the whole thing. That's what we all know about. We live with that internally. I was going to say eternally, but no, internally. And we live with that with single one of our decisions that we make. We try to get to this place of just being completely in alignment. But sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. So there's a conflict, and we believe and know that, for example, that eating healthy is where we are. That's our value. That's our value. Our value is that we believe strongly. We eat organically. We've got our fridges just stocked with all the right stuff. We've got our everything there. And then what happens, right? What happens? We find ourselves in the fast food lane, and in our laps is a bag with hamburger, French fries, and a Coke. How'd that happen? We got a conflict of interest right there, don't we? Because we're out of alignment with what we're saying our values are. But this is the thing. Like the push me, pull you, and we're a mixture of 2 different things, and we have 2 heads on either side, right? Sometimes it does feel like you have 2 different heads. And, gazelles, if you think about this, gazelles are beautiful, aren't they? And they're quick and they're amazing and all of this. And here's a myth. they're not faster than a cheetah. They just outmaneuver the cheetah so they don't get caught. And they're all over the place. And cheetahs can't zig and zag the way a gazelle can. And they have this thing called storking or something, and stonking, I think is what it is. And they just leap up with straight legs, just really high in the air. It's really bizarre. You can go to YouTube and take a look at it and just, what are they doing? They're letting their prey know, you think that you're the most athletic? It's me. It's me. I am the gazelle after all. And they're, of course, older gazelles and others are maybe not going to be able to do it, but there's a lot of gazelles that can outwit their prey. And then, of course, what are unicorns? Unicorns can be caught by maidens, by the way, only by a maiden, and they're beautiful, they're unique, they've got that long thing, they're loving, they're gentle, and they're pure in spirit. And that's us. We're pure in spirit with our intentions with what we're going to do, and then like a gazelle, we're all over the place and trying to outmaneuver the cheetah. And sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we end up as dinner, and sometimes we leave it all there and in the bag of fast food that we previously said, that's not what we want. There's our conflict of interest. And when we lose all sense of value and decide it's too hard or whatever it is that we've done, we have to come to our senses, if you will, or come to terms with our conflicted self and understand there's nothing wrong with us. That doesn't mean that we're not good people. That doesn't mean that we're not worthy. It is not a condemnation of who you are when you have these conflicted values. It hurts to our very, very soul, and we feel awful about it, don't we? But it's not you, it's what you did. And that needs to be definitely, there needs to be a dichotomy, a huge space between that. Because when we make a decision, by the way, that we're not worth it and that we're not valuable enough to separate those things out, that's when we start to really go down into that negative loop that we don't want. What we need to do is understand that part and parcel of this whole human experience is trying to sort that stuff out. Because like I said, there's always a jumble that we're dealing with in our heads. But the good news is that when we get to this place of saying, you know what, our worth isn't at all who we are. Our worth is not based on what we do, but who we are. And who are we? We know who we are. We are fearfully and wonderfully made by God himself, put here on purpose for purpose. And you can't argue with that. Because if anything is going to be perfect on this side of glory, it's going to be that very thing. That we're perfect in our imperfections. That we're perfectly made for being here with all of our warts, with all of our flaws, with all of our, oh my gosh, I did it again, with all of it. And that is so critical, because instead of getting down on yourself and beating yourself up and everything, you just say, you know what, this behavior of mine that I have done here, I just don't want that anymore. I don't want to be doing this anymore. It doesn't mean that we are less than. We're not. So here's the contrast, right? It's a contrast, because power is found in honoring who we are. All these warts and all, that's where your power is. I've told this story. I'm sure you guys are going to go, oh, I've heard this story before. But I'm going to tell it again. I don't care. Just let me know. Here's for going better for best. Sarah says, learning about brain function. Oh, I mean, everything has been, that's been the whole needle mover in my, that's why I'm telling you all this stuff. Because when we understand that our brains are either for us or against us, depending on the way we allow them to go, everything changes. And that's why I'm telling you about all this stuff. We're beautiful messes. We really are. Everybody's messy. Everybody is human. Everybody's experiencing something maybe a little bit differently, but we're in it together, y'all. And it doesn't mean you're less than because you mess up, period. It just means you're human, you know? And we have ways of getting a little bit better and a little bit better. That's why we are the rising tide. That's how those boats lift, because we hold each other up. We support it. Look at what everybody just said about Lynn. You know, how much do we love Lynn? You know, we're so proud of her. We just think the world of her. And that, my friends, is what we do. And when we're doing this kind of work, everyone's here on purpose for purpose. Everyone's here to love each other up and encourage and support. And everybody knows that Lynn didn't do it perfect. Sarah didn't. I didn't. Lucy didn't. None of us did. But guess what? We're here celebrating anyway. We're celebrating, and we're here in our own unique glory with our push me, pull you going on. Look at you. You know, God looks at you with grace colored glasses. Amen. He looks at all of us with grace colored glasses and says, you know what? Boy, did you mess up, but I picked you anyway. I chose you anyway. And guess what? You're here, right here in this time. I mean, why didn't he put you into the 17th century? Why did he put you here now? Why? You know, we're not going to know the answer this side of glory, but I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to tell you what. Perfection is on the other side. And your imperfect perfection here, just the fact that you've been created, is enough. Is enough. So, you know, the story I'm going to tell you is just super quick. And it was about when I finally had that thing called self-acceptance, because that's basically what I'm talking about here. And self-acceptance is like, we give a lot of lip service to self-acceptance, don't we? When really, in fact, we're not. We're beating ourselves up. We're looking in the mirror. We're tearing ourselves down. And we have this negative loop going in our heads. And our thinking is just sucks. Can I just be honest? When I went to the Lane Bryant store with Marla, this was in 2000, I don't know, 4 or 5, something like that, way back. And it was, we had a great time. We went and had this huge, fabulous Italian dinner. And you can imagine it was a carb fest. And then we had dessert and we had wine. And I mean, honestly, I probably, you know, could have been rolled out of the door. But we went and tried on clothes at the Lane Bryant. And I was just like, okay, let's just go there. And for me, it was coming to terms with, girlfriend, you don't fit in stuff that isn't in the Lane Bryant store. And I went in there and I went, wow, cute clothes, finally, you know, something that's going to fit, because I had always gone to the department store and just looked for the bigger sizes, and it wasn't enough, and it wasn't big enough, and it didn't fit, and it, you know, everything was terrible. So I'm in the trying on room and I'm finding all these things. I had clothes. I mean, you know, this much. I'm trying to show you this meant, seriously, this many clothes. Everything. I remember the day that I left there, I spent $500. I'd never spent that kind of money on clothes before, you know, really. 500, maybe even more. I don't even remember. It was so many clothes and bags. I just felt like whatever. But I remember being in the fitting room, trying stuff on, and the fitting, you know, the sales associate walks in there and she, you know, she's handing me stuff and she looks at me and she goes, really? You know, she's looking at me sitting there. Now remember, 2005, my children were born in 1990 and 1991. So do the math. They're in their teens. And I'm in a nursing bra. A nursing bra. Do you know why? Because I didn't have enough self-worth, self-acceptance, that unless I was thin, I wasn't worth a decent bra. I wasn't worth good clothes. I wasn't worth it. And it was right that she gave me a new bra, she put it on, and she pulled the girls up. Everything looked better. And do you know, at that moment, click. I get it. Accept and love myself right now, right here, right today, where I am. And it was all good. And I left with all those clothes and new bras, and I got matching panties. I'd never done anything like that before. But that was glorious, and it opened the door and it opened my eyes to accept myself. All the conflict, all the stuff that doesn't work, all the things that I do this over here and I do that over there. And you know what it feels like, right? We are a big mess. Like I said, we'll find ourselves laughing on one moment and then crying the next. You know, we purport to do good and then we're talking about somebody behind their backs. We are a conflict. We are. And Sarah's just saying beauty from ashes, joy from mourning. Beauty from ashes was one of my most amazing Bible verses that really helped me understand that God redeems the irredeemable. And God gives us that grace to do that with ourselves. Listen, if he can do it for us, why can't we do it for ourselves? That's what I'm talking about today. That's what I'm talking about. So while we are this just conflicted, beautiful mess, the contrast of who we are, that's where the creativity comes in. That's where the building up comes in. That's where we have an opportunity and we have the grace to create the vibrant lives that we want to live. Because we recognize it of us who we are. We see that we haven't accepted ourselves. We see that we haven't given ourselves the worthiness that God sees it in us. Why can't we do that with ourselves? Honestly, therein lies the conflict of interest. If he can do that for us and we can't do it for ourselves, what are we really saying to him? It's not enough. I don't have gratitude for that, or I'd just rather get wrapped up in wearing a nursing bra because whatever. This is where we have to come back to. So what I want to say to you is one thing, and that is that your beautiful self, where your higher self lives, your soul, the Holy Spirit, your intuition, your knowing, all this yummy stuff that's inside of us, the stuff we forget to nurture, all of this inside, we already know this stuff. We already know this. We just don't practice it. We're not in alignment with it. And so what do we need to do to get into that? I want you to start listening to your higher self, by the way. I do. Because when you're listening to your higher self, this is the God part of you. You know, we are made in the image of God, in the image of him. So if that's the case, then let's get busy. Number one, you need to do, have patience with yourself and recognize when this stuff comes along. It will, promise, it will. That's what happens. So when it comes along, just say, okay, you know what? Patience. He's got patience with me. Why can't I have patience with me? Let's work this stuff through and do it. Number two, be brave. Be brave about what you do. And just instead of shrinking back, go forward and say, I'm going to do it anyway. And watch what happens. Watch what happens. That's where the magic comes. That's where the sparkle happens. That's where everything starts to magically come together. Amazing how that works. And number three, maybe forgiveness is holding you back. Maybe you need to forgive yourself. Maybe you need to forgive somebody else. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe you can just say, you know what, forget about the forgiveness. I just need to get into the place of radical acceptance. Because that forgiveness stuff, I just keep trying, it's not working. Okay, fine. Let it go. Radically accept whatever is that you need to accept. That way we can move on. This is the thing we need to do. Number four is willingness. Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to allow for all these things? Are you willing to live in contrast? Are you willing to accept this undeniable truth that your worth is not based on what you do, it's based on who you are. Are you willing to do that? If you're willing to do that, you're opening the door to unmitigated grace. It just flows. It just flows. And number five, last but not least, is if you have an expectation that life is working out on your behalf for you, it's just going to happen. Remember your reticular activating system and the red Prius. You know, you want to buy a red Prius and suddenly you see red Priuses everywhere. It's not because they weren't there. It's just it wasn't in your awareness. It wasn't on your radar. Put your life, your own life, on your own radar screen. and be aware of what's going on. And if you don't like something, change it without the self-flagellation. Just allow. Things happen for me, not to me. Exactly. Amen. And Sarah's right, because you know what happens when we have that attitude? It's like, what can I do? That's when you start making beauty from ashes. That's when you start to see, this is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of something else, even when I can't see it, even if it's awful. And I'm not going to go through every single scenario. Of course not. I can't. Just be crazy. But we have the ability at any time to step into this kind of radical acceptance about ourselves, of living in this conflict of interest that we have within ourselves, but of being loving to ourselves so that we can, in turn that all around and be loving toward others. When we have that kind of a value on ourselves, it's amazing how much more we value others and how much better our lives run, simply because of accepting ourselves radically like this. It's everything. I appreciate the fact that you show up, that you share this video, and that you are just a part of this community. That's enough for me. I appreciate you so much. Peace be with you. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.